Welcome to FO Podcasts. With me is Zweli Martin Dlamini. He is the editor of Swaziland News, an independent online publication. He has over 10 years of experience as an investigative journalist. Dlamini has been persecuted several times by the Eswatini government for writing critical articles against King Mswati. He has also worked with the BBC, that is the British Broadcasting Corporation. Zweli, welcome to FO Podcast and thank you for speaking to Fair Observer.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I appreciate.
So, very quickly for our global audience and our listeners, Eswatini is a landlocked country in southern Africa. It is surrounded by South Africa on three sides and has Mozambique to its east. It is the second smallest country in Africa and was previously known as Swaziland until 2018. Eswatini has a population of 1.2 million and is ruled by King Mswati III. Very recently, they have accepted third country migrants that were deported by the United States. Zweli, why is Eswatini accepting deportees?
Thank you. As you have just alluded, Eswatini have just accepted the deportees from the United States. In fact, this was a secret agreement that we managed to get hold of around last month, if I'm not mistaken. But it was a secret deportation, even though there were information suggesting that an agreement was signed. So Eswatini, as far as I understand, and then as per the information in my possession, Eswatini signed an agreement with the United States, and there is a monetary exchange in this regard, which means Eswatini will receive money, and on the other hand, they will accept the deportees from the US.
Right. So, what happens when these migrants end up in Eswatini? Are they given legal status? Are they given jobs? Are they being abandoned? What's really happening?
Upon arrival, what you have just understand is the fact that these deportees are taken to a secured place. The government call it a secured place, which is the Matsapa maximum prison. And there are some information that is fast emerging, suggesting that some of the deportees are kept in the eastern parts of Eswatini because, as you understand, that in Eswatini there is the central maximum prison known as a Matsapa prison, and then there's other various prison across the country. But the Matsapa prison is the one that is somehow more secure than the others.
Right. And what about ordinary Liswatis? Do they even know that these people are being brought into their country and they're being sent to prisons and even central prisons?
It came as a shock. It came as a shock because they even got to know about it through the media, through the independent media. Even Parliament wasn't aware. Even some cabinet ministers wasn't aware. So it was a secret deal, and then the entire country was shocked. It seems deal that was facilitated by the prime minister and the king. So it was just a deal that was discussed in closed doors. Of course, the king was aware, as far as I understand.
Right. What we already know is that 10 people have been brought in, and there are several reports that Eswatini has agreed to take 160 people that will be deported by the Trump administration. And several reports say that Eswatini will be paid $5.1 million for this. What is really going on? Who is getting this money? And why is there not much, I would say, media attention to this deal?
I'm glad that you are talking about the monetary terms. And firstly, as you have been following this story, the New York Times reported that Eswatini will receive around 10 billion. That was when converted to the South African rands, because the currency of Eswatini is equivalent to the South African rand. But a few hours ago, as I was talking to you before we even started this interview, I received a copy of the agreement. In fact, somehow the agreement, I wouldn't be sure because I will have to verify it. The agreement that I have now, it's speaking about, or is suggesting the 5.1 million, which is contrary to earlier reports. So think what happened here, there were some changes of the initial agreement after the pressure, because in Eswatini, after the deportation, the first deportations, there was a court challenge. A human rights and women rights organization filed a court application, of course, with the support of the Southern African Litigation Center, challenging the constitutionality of these deportees. So it remains a mystery how and what is the initial agreement in this regard, because somehow the agreement keep on changing, and the amount is never known because it keeps on changing as well.
Swelly, you said that most of Liswatis didn't actually know that this deal had gone through, and the deal was basically done by Eswatini's prime minister and King Mswati. Why do you think they have made this deal with the Trump administration? What are they really gaining out of it? Is it just the money, or are they trying to, I would say, get into the good books of Washington?
Thank you. I think you've just asked a very important question. Um, if you can analyze the political or the politics of the United States currently, before the United States President Donald Trump administration, there was another administration, other the Joe Biden president. The current administration of the United States is pro the system of Eswatini, which means it's in full support of the current status quo, which means Donald Trump supports the Eswatini monarchy fully. You will understand that Donald Trump leadership style, even in the Middle East, he's in full support of monarchies. In fact, dictators. He operates through dictators because his style of leadership also suggests that way. So, the current administration of the United States, as you will understand, is now enjoying warm diplomatic ties with the current system. We call it in here in Eswatini the Tinkhundla system of governance. So the diplomatic ties have been uh, warm since the United States excuse me, the current administration of the United States has been enjoying warm diplomatic ties with the Kingdom of Eswatini. So it has been easy in this regard to have these deportees dumped in the Kingdom of Eswatini. I hope I'm answering your question correctly in this regard. Thank you.
Yes, yes. Thank you very much, Swelly. But I have a follow up to that. So I want to know, is Eswatini basically being used as a dumping ground for these deportees to basically help Trump look tough on immigration, because the US president had promised, and he had in fact said that he would carry out America's largest deportation of illegal migrants, and he said millions would be deported. Well, there was a lot of pushback from other countries, but now we see that Eswatini, a really small country in Africa, um, is accepting third country deportees. Who is really gaining here in Eswatini? And do you,
Thank you.
and sorry, and do you think they are basically helping Trump improve his image of being tough on immigration?
I think we need to understand it based on the win-win diplomatic agreements, because I will say in Eswatini, personally, the king is benefiting, because in Eswatini, the country is ruled by an absolute monarchy. And as I've just alluded, at the beginning of this interview, even Parliament wasn't aware of this deportation. There was no agreement that was ever debated in Parliament. So when you look at it in the broader political context, you will understand that Eswatini is also or has been negotiating fair trade tariffs with the United States. So I think that in the midst of those discussions, there was this agreement that was reached, which means I will call it a win-win situation or in the broader diplomatic context. But at the same time, I will call it the abuse of the sovereignty of the country because Eswatini, as a third world country, does not have enough resources even to that these dangerous criminals from the United States does not pose a danger to entire security of the region in the Southern Africa, and we call it the SADC region. So we can look at it in the broader diplomatic context, and at the same time uh, understand that it seeks to undermine the security of the region.
Zweli, you just said that criminals have been deported. Can you tell us more? Who really are the people that the Trump administration is sending to Eswatini? Is it mostly criminals from third countries, or are there women and children who are basically illegal migrants in the US also being deported to Eswatini?
Currently, the information that we have, these are dangerous criminals. We call them dangerous criminals because they were previously convicted of rape, child rape, and murder. So these are serious crimes, even in terms of international law. So that's why we call them dangerous criminals. And these deportations triggered diplomatic tension, even with the neighboring South Africa. You will understand if you've been following the news. The foreign minister of the neighboring South Africa did release a statement through his spokesperson, and that is the minister is Ronald Lamula. He released a statement through his spokesperson expressing serious concern regarding this deportation that seeks to undermine the security of the entire region. So I can confidently confirm that these are dangerous criminals. It's not even alleged because. According to the documentation that resulted to these deportations, they were previously convicted of child rape and murder. A majority of them.
Right. Zweli, you're an investigative journalist who has personally faced state persecution in Eswatini because you've been very critical of the government and the king. When you first heard that the Trump administration was deporting third country migrants to your country, what was your immediate reaction? What was going through your mind? And why do you think this is a big deal and more media outlets need to speak about this?
What came to my mind was the a suspicion that the King Mswati, has cashed large amounts of money, and my suspicions were subsequently proven to be true because. As I told you, as I've just mentioned in the beginning of this interview, there's this agreement that suggesting some monetary gains on the side of the country. Of course, we know that every amount that came in coming in the kingdom of a certain, the king will know, and obviously will have a share. So for me, it was a shock, but at the same time, I blame the king for abusing the sovereignty of the country for personal gain. So all these deportations and the subsequent to the agreement, as far as I understand, seeks to enrich or enlarge the pockets of the king and his royal family.
Right. Zweli, I see a pattern over here. So the US has sent about 10, maybe more, deportees to your country, Eswatini. I remember the UK was trying to strike a similar deal with Rwanda. Italy has is also trying to do something with Albania. Do you think Western countries are basically outsourcing their moral responsibilities, their troubles, and basically illegal migrants to Africa and to Asian countries, even to smaller European nations among themselves. Do you think, are you worried that more Western powers are actually going to do what the Trump administration is doing and basically dump all their problems onto African countries?
I think we need to understand it not only on the security aspect, but of course, we must understand it or must analyze it within the broader diplomatic spectrum of the United States seeking to have full control of other nations and of course dominate the world because these deportees in the midst of unrest, you will understand what happened in Syria if you have been following the politics of Syria, just another country in the Middle East. In the midst of a political unrest or political conflict, most of the time, you will hear stories suggesting that prison or prisoners have escaped. And this strategy, I started to suspect it in the recent unrest in the neighboring Mozambique because such strategies you find that of the political unrest once the people receive information that prisoners have escaped obviously it creates some panic or shock and even instability within that particular country and in the midst of that instability you find that there is a quick transfer of power and sometimes through unconstitutional means. And when you trace those who are behind those um, seeking to overthrow that particular government in that particular country, you find that either there's the United States behind this or other agents of the West.
Zweli, before we go, finally, why aren't more Liswatis making noise about this? Why aren't they asking the government, why are you bringing in so many deportees from the US? Why, who is really behind this deal? Why are people afraid to ask questions in your country about this particular deal?
Thank you. Eswatini is a country that has been oppressed. The people have been oppressed for the past, I will say, for the past no, over 50 years. Yeah, over 50 years because in 1968 there was democracy in Eswatini after the independence, and that democracy lasted for at least 5 years. And then in 1973 the then King Sobhuza II, who was a constitutional monarch at the time, banned political parties and elevated himself into the status of a monarch, thus assuming all executive, judicial, legislative powers. So ever since the country has been experiencing a gross violation of human rights, people are not free to exercise their right to freedom of expression, freedom of opinion, and a freedom of political participation. The people are not free to form political parties and decide who must be in government and decide who must be in charge of the political affairs of the kingdom. So, based on that oppression, the people have been docile, the people have been afraid, have been intimidated from speaking against the issues that affect their welfare. So it's a country whereby people are silenced either through the barrel of a gun or the abuse of cultural norms and tradition to ensure that the people remain subjective to the institution of the monarch, even on issues that seeks to undermine their welfare or the security of the country, or other things that might affect them in the future. So that's why even in the recent, I think about 4 years ago, there was a political unrest in Eswatini. People were demanding democracy, but unfortunately, the current king, that is King Mswati, unleashed the soldiers and the police to shoot and kill those who were protesting, demanding democracy. So it's a country where dissenting voices are silenced through the barrel of the gun.
Do you think that the current acceptance of deportees could maybe change that? Basically, what I'm trying to ask here and get your feel from the ground is: do you think people will this time voice their opinions and say, okay, the limit has been crossed? There has to be a stand needs to be taken. Do you think that can happen this time?
It will depend whether these deportations affects them directly or in their personal capacity. I'll make an example. If maybe one criminal can escape and cause havoc and rape women, and when we trace that criminal, we find that he is part of those who were recently deported. That, of course, can change the political dynamics or the political landscape or how people view the current administration. But if this deportation will just be handled the way it's being handled now, whereby the government is saying no, it's true, we're accepting these criminals from the US, but they won't stay there. They won't stay here. It's just a matter of a transit. They will eventually be repatriated to their respective countries, and maybe there won't be any issues. But if their suspicion or their fears could be confirmed through maybe if we can have information suggesting that one or two or maybe three of these criminals have escaped, and we're receiving reports or information that these criminals are killing or they are raping women. Maybe that could cause some form of instability within the country, or maybe result to the people rising against the current administration.
Thank you, Zweli, for speaking to Fair Observer and basically shining light and giving an honest Eswatini lens on what really is going on with these deportations from the United States. Thank you so much for speaking to us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.